The great tomb of Nazareth rests beneath gentle hills where moonlight pools like silver water across ancient stone. Here, in this other world, far from the noise and rush of earth, Ain's Walgaun has found something unexpected, a place where time moves differently, where each day unfolds with the softness of turning pages. When did you last watch his journey unfold? And if this tale brings you peace, perhaps you'll return for more. Tonight, the marble halls hold no urgency, only the quiet glow of magical torches that never flicker, never fail, casting their amber warmth across floors polished smooth by centuries. The air smells of old parchment and dried herbs, a scent that settles into your lungs like comfort itself. Outside, the night sky stretches endlessly, stars bright as scattered diamonds against velvet darkness. Crickets sing their patient songs. A breeze moves through the tall grass surrounding the tomb, making it whisper secrets to the stones. Everything here exists in a state of permanent twilight, calm, neither day nor night, but something softer, suspended between both. And so our story begins. This quiet legend from the New World tells of a guardian who traveled far from everything familiar, only to discover that protection and peace grow from the same gentle root. In the old tales, they say that those who watch over others with patient care eventually find themselves watched over in return, held safe by the very world they tend. Tonight, we follow Ain's Walgaun, the undead overlord who wears his power like a careful gardener wears gloves. Gently, with purpose, never crushing what he touches. He moves through his domain not with the thunder of conquest, but with the measured steps of someone learning, day by quiet day, what it means to truly rest. The throne room stands empty this evening, its vast space filled only with the soft echo of settling stone. Ains walks past it without entering, his skeletal form casting no shadow in the warm torchlight. He wears simple robes tonight, not the elaborate vestments of rulership, just cloth that moves with him like water, deep purple that catches the light and holds it softly. His steps make no sound on the marble. He has dismissed the usual formalities, sent the guardians to their own peaceful pursuits, given himself permission to simply wander. This is new for him, this allowance of purposeless movement. On Earth, in that other life that grows hazier with each passing season, there was always something urgent pulling at him, some deadline, some obligation that made his shoulders tight and his mind race ahead. Here, in this transformed existence, he has slowly learned that time bends differently. That hours can stretch like honey. That there is no crime in letting a whole evening pass while watching dust motes dance in lamplight. He finds himself drawn to the gardens tonight, those underground spaces where Aura and Mare have cultivated impossible beauty. The entrance appears before him, a simple wooden door in the stone, and when he opens it, the scent of growing things rolls out like a gentle tide earth and green life and something floral that has no name in the language he remembers from before. The garden exists in its own pocket of reality, a space that should not be possible beneath so much stone and earth, yet here it thrives. Soft moss carpets the ground, springy beneath his feet. Trees grow in spiraling patterns, their leaves catching light from floating orbs that drift like lazy fireflies between the branches. A stream runs through the center, its water clear as air, making sounds that loop and repeat in rhythms that sink into the mind like prayer. Ains follows the stream without deciding to follow it. His feet simply carry him along its bank, while his eye sockets empty yet somehow still capable of taking in beauty. Register every detail. The water reflects the floating lights, doubling them, making the whole space shimmer. Ferns uncurl along the edges, their fronds a green so deep it's almost black in the shadows, almost gold where the light touches them. Night-blooming flowers dot the moss, White petals opened wide to drink in the magical glow. Their scent is filled with pollen that sparkles faintly. He has no need to breathe, yet something in his chest expands and contracts with the rhythm of this place. The undead body he inhabits functions perfectly, without breath, without heartbeat, without any of the small mortal tethers to existence. But lately, he has noticed himself responding, moving in time with the world around him. As if some deeper part of him, the part that existed before bone and magic, still remembers how to be soothed by running water and growing things. A butterfly lands on his sleeve, its wings iridescent blue that shifts to purple in the moving light. It sits there, opening and closing its wings in slow contentment, unafraid of the skeletal hand beneath it. Ainz goes very still, watching it. The butterfly's legs are thin as hairs against its robe. Its antennae wave gently, exploring the fabric. After a long moment that feels outside of time, it lifts off again, spiraling upward into the canopy of leaves. He continues walking, following no map, no plan, just letting the garden reveal itself, one turn at a time. The stream widens into a pool, its surface smooth as dark glass. Around its edges, stones have been arranged in careful patterns. Not formal or rigid, but with a kind of attention that speaks of care, of time, spent on something purely because it deserves that care. Small fish move in the pool's depths, bright silver flashes that appear and vanish like thoughts you almost catch before they slip away. Ainz settles onto one of the flat stones by the pool's edge. The stone holds warmth from the magical lights, radiating it up through his bones in gentle waves. He finds himself sitting there, simply sitting, while the garden breathes around him. The stream speaks its constant soft language. Leaves rustle with movements too subtle to see. Somewhere deeper in the space, a nightbird calls, a sound like water over smooth stones. This is what he has been learning these past months and seasons in this world, that is not Earth, not the game he once played, but something else entirely. He has been learning that power does not always need to announce itself, that being capable of vast and terrible things does not mean those things must be done, that sometimes the strongest magic is in choosing stillness. On Earth, in that old life, he would have called this inefficiency, time wasted. Every moment not spent advancing, improving, achieving was a moment lost to the grinding inevitability of survival. The company he worked for had taught him well. Optimize, maximize, never stop, never slow, because someone else is always running faster behind you. His body had held that knowledge in its bones, that constant humming urgency that never quite let him rest, even in sleep. Here, that urgency has no purchase. His guardians run the tomb with devoted efficiency. The Sorcerer Kingdom expands its borders through careful diplomacy and measured strength. The treaties he has made hold firm. His people are fed, protected, content. And he's discovered something unexpected in the spaces between necessary actions. He has discovered that he can be still. That stillness does not equal weakness or failure. That sometimes sitting by a pool in an underground garden while fish swim lazy circles is enough, is perhaps everything. The water ripples though, no wind touches it. A fish breaks the surface, creates expanding rings that lap gently at the stones. Ainz watches the rings spread and fade, spread and fade. His mind, usually so full of calculations and contingencies and the careful dance of maintaining his role, grows quiet. The thoughts slow like the fish themselves, circling languidly through the space of his skull. He thinks of his guild members, those friends from the game who never made it to this world with him. The ache of their absence has softened over time, transformed from sharp grief into something more like the distant warmth of sunlight through closed eyelids. They would have liked this garden, he thinks. would have logged in just to sit here, to let the coded beauty wash over them after their own grinding days in the real world. Perhaps, in some way, he carries them with him into this stillness. Perhaps sitting here is for all of them, all those who never got to truly rest. A small creature emerges from beneath the ferns, something between a mouse and a rabbit, with fur that glows faintly in the darkness. It hops to the pool's edge, drinks delicately, its whiskers catching droplets that shine like diamonds. It notices Ainz but shows no fear, simply continues its small ritual of thirst and presence. When it finishes, it grooms its face with tiny paws, then disappears back into the undergrowth, leaving only the gentle rustling of its passage. These moments accumulate. They build like sediment, layer upon layer, creating something solid beneath his feet. Each time he allows himself to simply exist without purpose or goal, some small part of the tension he carried from Earth dissolves a little more. He is becoming native to this gentleness, this different rhythm. The Overlord who could level kingdoms, learning to sit perfectly still while a glowing mouse rabbit drinks from a pool. The floating lights begin a slow dance, moving in patterns that spiral and weave through the garden space. They brighten and dim in waves, creating a pulse of illumination that moves through the trees like breath, like tide, like something alive and aware and benevolent. Ainz watches them, his consciousness expanding to match their rhythm. There is magic here, old magic woven into the garden's foundation, but it is magic of the gentlest kind, the magic of growth and patience, of small things tended until they become beautiful. He thinks of the children, Aura and Mare, who created this space with their combined talents. Dark elves in service to the tomb, but also simply young beings who needed beauty, who instinctively knew that even an undead overlord requires places of softness. They had asked permission so tentatively, worried he would see their desire for gardens as frivolous. He had granted it without hesitation, though at the time he had not fully understood why it mattered. Now, sitting here in their creation, he understands. They had built this for him as much as for themselves, had sensed in him the same need for refuge that lived in their own hearts. The garden is a gift, and gifts like this, quiet, ongoing, asking nothing in return, are perhaps the truest form of protection. Not walls or weapons, but spaces where weariness can lay itself down. Time passes unmeasured. The pool reflects the dancing lights. The stream continues its eternal conversation with the stones. Ainz remains on his warming rock, a figure of bone and magic, learning the ancient art of accepting peace when it is offered. His eye sockets glow their faint crimson, but even that light seems softer here, less like warnings and more like the embers of a dying fire, not extinguishing, but settling into a steady warmth that can last through the longest night. Eventually, though there is no rush to this, eventually, no deadline approaching, he rises. His joints move smoothly, the magic that animates him flowing like the stream itself, unhurried and constant. He walks deeper into the garden, following paths that wind between glowing mushrooms and curtains of hanging moss. Each turn reveals new small wonders. A tree growing perfectly horizontal before curving skyward, its trunk smooth as glass. A bed of flowers that chime when the breeze touches them, a sound like distant bells, a hollow log where luminous insects make their homes, turning it into a lantern of living light. The garden seems endless, though he knows it must have boundaries. But those boundaries feel distant, theoretical. What matters is the journey through growing things, the succession of gentle discoveries. His footsteps on the moss make no sound. He is a ghost moving through paradise, both part of it and apart from it, a paradox that no longer troubles him. He finds a grove of silver birch trees, their bark glowing with pale lunar light. Between them, someone has hung hammocks, simple cloth stretched between the trunks, swaying slightly in the garden's constant gentle breeze. Ains approaches one, runs his skeletal fingers along the fabric. It is soft, worn, comfortable. An invitation to rest that asks nothing, promises nothing except the simple experience of suspension, of being held. He considers the hammock. In his old life, lying down meant sleep, meant vulnerability, meant a theft of productive hours. Even rest was monitored, optimized, something to be achieved efficiently so he could return to the necessary grind. But here now, there is no grind. There is only this garden, this night that will last exactly as long as it needs to last, this hammock that sways like a cradle. Ains lowers himself into the fabric. It accepts his weight without complaint, wrapping around his form in a gentle embrace. He lies back, looking up through the birch branches to the ceiling far above, where more magical lights drift in their eternal patient dance. The hammock rocks slightly with his settling, a motion that reminds him of water, of boats on calm seas, of being carried by something larger and kinder than himself. The weariness he carries, not physical, for his body never tires, but something deeper, some bone memory of exhaustion from a life before, begins to seep out of him into the hammock's cradle. The fabric seems to absorb it, to take it willingly and transform it into something else, something that dissipates like mist into the garden air. He feels lighter, not less substantial, but less burdened. As if the heaviness of being an overlord, of making decisions that affect thousands, of maintaining the careful facade of absolute confidence, all of it can rest here, can be set down like an armor too long worn. Around him, the garden continues its existence. The stream speaks, the fish swim, the night bird calls and is answered by another deeper in the trees. Moths with wings like stained glass flutter past, drawn to the hanging lights. Everything moves in its own time, following rhythms older than names, older than kingdoms, older than the separation between worlds. Ains closes his eyes. Though he has no eyelids, there is still a way to close the seeing part of himself, to turn inward. In the darkness behind his skull, he finds not emptiness but a space, slowly filling with the garden's peace. Each sound adds to it, the water, the leaves, the distant chime of wind, touched flowers. Each sensation, the hammock's gentle rock, the warm air, the scent of growing things, layers into the darkness like paint on canvas, creating something new. He thinks distantly that this must be what safety feels like, not the safety of walls and guards and overwhelming magical power, though he has all of those things, but the deeper safety of knowing that, in this moment, nothing is required. That he can simply be here, suspended in cloth between silver trees, listening to a garden breathe around him, and that is enough. That he is enough, that the overlord and the former office worker and the player and the guardian, all the roles he carries, can rest together in this one quiet body. The thought arrives like the butterfly that landed on his sleeve earlier, gentle, unexpected, true. He is enough. The world has not ended because he took an evening to wander a garden. His kingdom still stands. His people still sleep safely. And he, who was once so certain that rest equaled failure, lies here in a hammock learning the revolutionary truth that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is allow yourself to be held. Time dissolves. The hammock rocks. The garden breathes. Ains floats in the space between waking and something deeper, a state he has rarely accessed since his transformation. It is not sleep. The undead do not require sleep, but it is rest of a kind, a settling of consciousness into pure presence. No past tugging at him with its should, haves and could haves. no future demanding preparation and contingency. Only now, only this, only the gentle suspension in silver light and growing things. A leaf falls from the branches above, drifts down in lazy spirals, lands on his chest. He does not brush it away. It sits there perfectly placed, a small weight that matters and doesn't matter, a reminder that even in an undead body he can still be touched by the world, can still receive the small gifts that fall from above without asking, without earning, just because he is here to receive them. The garden knows no urgency. It has existed for seasons now, will exist for seasons more, patient in its beauty. The trees grow at their own pace, unconcerned with productivity metrics or quarterly assessments. The flowers bloom when they are ready, sleep when they are ready, follow no schedule but their own. And here, held by the hammock between these trees, Ains begins to absorb that truth into his bones. That living, truly living, requires this kind of permission. Permission to move at the speed of growth rather than the speed of fear. He has built an empire in this new world, has earned respect and loyalty through strength and strategy. But lying here in the garden his guardians made, he understands that empire building and rest are not opposites. That perhaps the empire he has built exists precisely so that moments like this can exist within it. Protected spaces where even an overlord can lay down his crown and remember what it feels like to simply be part of something larger, something that asks nothing but accepts everything. The night deepens, though in the garden, night is always deep, always perfect. The lights continue their dance, the stream continues its song, the hammock continues its gentle rock. And Ains, surrounded by silver bark and glowing moss and the infinite patience of growing things, allows himself to rest in a way he never could before, in a way he is still learning, in a way that feels like coming home to a place he didn't know existed. This is his kingdom, yes, but more than that, it is his sanctuary. These underground gardens where magic makes the impossible bloom, where time bends around beauty instead of deadline, where even an overlord made of bone and ancient power can learn to receive care as freely as he gives protection. The hammock holds him, the garden holds him, the night holds him. And slowly, gradually, like roots growing deep into earth, he allows himself to be held. When Ains finally rises from the hammock, it is not because anything calls him away, but simply because his consciousness drifts naturally toward movement again, like a leaf deciding to continue its journey downstream. The hammock releases him gently, and he stands among the silver birches, feeling somehow more solid than before, as if the rest has given him new weight, new presence in this world. He walks from the grove along a different path, one that leads upward through terraced levels where flowering vines cascade down stone walls in waterfalls of purple and white. The flowers glow from within, each petal holding its own small star of light. They smell of honey and something else, something that has no name in the language of earth. Perhaps it is the scent of magic itself, sweet and clean and infinitely gentle. The path brings him to a circular clearing where the ceiling opens to reveal actual sky. Real stars pierce the darkness above, their ancient light traveling impossible distances to reach this underground sanctuary. In the center of the clearing stands a fountain, but not the ornate carved stone variety he knew from museums and city squares. This fountain is made of living crystal that grows up from the earth in organic spirals, water flowing through channels in the crystal itself, creating a sound like singing, like voices heard from far away speaking words just beyond understanding. Ains approaches the fountain, drawn by its music. The water catches starlight and multiplies it, sending reflected patterns dancing across the surrounding grass. Small white stones line the fountain's base, each one smooth and perfect, worn round by centuries of patient water. He reaches out with one skeletal hand and lets his fingers trail through the flowing water. It is cold, sharp and bright against his bones. He has no nerve endings, no temperature sensors, yet somehow he feels the water's essence, its clarity, its purpose, its endless patient journey from source to sea and back again. The sensation travels up his arm, spreads through his chest, fills him with something he cannot name. Not quite joy, not quite peace, but something that contains both and more. The feeling of being washed clean from the inside out. He cups his hands beneath the flow and watches the water pool there, spilling over the edges of his arm bones, dripping back down to begin its circuit again. In this moment, he is not the Overlord of Nazarick, not the ruler of the Sorcerer Kingdom, not the player who became his character. He is simply a being standing beneath stars, holding water, present to the miracle of flow and return. The fountain's song continues, never repeating exactly but always familiar, like a memory of comfort from before memory began. Ainz finds himself humming along with it, a deep resonance from his chest that harmonizes with the water's voice. The sound surprises him. He did not know he could did not know his undead form could create anything so musical. But here it is, his voice joining the fountains, creating something together that neither could make alone. Minutes stretch, the water flows, the stars watch. And slowly, something in Ainz that has been clenched tight since his arrival in this world, perhaps since long before, since his days in that other life of fluorescent lights and endless shifts, begins to unfurl, like a fist opening, like a flower deciding it is safe enough to bloom. He thinks of his guardians, those loyal beings who wait for his commands with such devotion. Albedo with a passionate intensity, Demiurge with his brilliant strategic mind, Cocytus with his warrior's honor, Sheltia with her complex pride, all of them powerful, capable, and yet, he sees it now, all of them also learning to exist in this new world where they are more than programming, more than character sheets and stats. They are becoming real in the same way he is, finding themselves through the daily practice of living beyond their original purposes. And perhaps that is the true gift of this world, this strange reality that should not exist but does. It offers transformation not through grand gestures, but through small permissions. Permission to grow beyond your coding. Permission to discover what you were never programmed to have. Permission to stand by a fountain and hum with running water while stars watch from above. A moth lands on the fountain's crystal edge, its wings the color of moonlight on snow. It drinks from the water, its tiny tongue extending and retracting in a rhythm that matches the fountain's pulse. Ainz watches it with complete attention, as if this moth is the most important thing in all the realms. And in this moment, it is. There is nothing more important than this small creature taking its drink, surviving, continuing, just as he is surviving, continuing, learning with each breath he doesn't need to take. The moth finishes and flies away, disappearing into the garden's darkness. Ainz remains at the fountain a while longer, letting its music fill him, letting the star-touched water wash away layers of assumption about what an overlord should be, should do, should feel. He discovers in this washing that power and gentleness are not opposites. That he can hold the strength to level nations in the same hands that trail gently through fountain water. That both are true. That he contains multitudes. When he finally steps away from the fountain, he follows a path marked by luminous stones set into the grass. They glow with a soft blue light, leading him toward the garden's far reaches. The stones seem to know where he needs to go, marking a way towards something he hasn't yet discovered but already needs. The path winds through a meadow of tall grass that whispers as he passes. The grass reaches his waist, each blade tipped with a seed head that catches light and holds it. Moving through them is like moving through a field of gentle stars, earthbound constellations that part for him and close behind, marking his passage and then erasing it, allowing him to exist without leaving scars. In the meadow's center, he finds a tree unlike any he has seen before. It grows at an impossible angle, its trunk horizontal to the ground for 20 feet before curving gently upward. The horizontal section forms a natural bench, smooth and wide, worn by wind and time into a perfect resting place. The tree's leaves are silver on one side and gold on the other, creating a shimmering canopy that sounds like rain when they move. Heinz sits on the horizontal trunk, feels it solid beneath him. The bark is warm, alive with slow tree consciousness that radiates up through his bones. He leans back against the upward curving section and looks out across the meadow, across the waving grass and scattered lights, toward the garden's distant edges where everything fades into soft darkness. This is what belonging feels like, he realizes. Not ownership or conquest, not the belonging that comes from taking and holding, but the belonging that arrives when you discover you have been held all along. The tree grew this way, horizontal, perfect for sitting, long before he arrived to need it. The garden breathed before he came to walk through it. The fountain sang for centuries before his hand touched its water, and yet all of it seems to say, "We were waiting. We were always waiting. Welcome home." The thought brings something unexpected, a pressure behind his eyes where tears should form but cannot. He has no tear ducts, no mechanism for crying, yet the emotion is there, full and real, a wave of gratitude so large it has nowhere to go but into the tree beneath him, into the grass around him, into the silver gold leaves above. He is grateful for this garden, for this world, for the strange gift of being transformed into something that should not feel but does, should not care but must, should not need rest but craves it with an intensity that borders on prayer. A firefly appears in the grass, then another, then dozens. They rise like tiny stars being born, blinking their cold fire in patterns that seem almost like language. On, off, here, gone. Present, absent. A reminder that even light needs darkness to be seen, that even brightness takes breaks, pulses, knows when to rest and when to shine. Ainz watches the fireflies dance. They weave between the grass blades, rise toward the tree's canopy, circle back down in spirals that have no purpose except beauty. No predator hunts them here, no deadline presses them. They exist purely to transform their small bodies into momentary stars, and that is enough. That is everything. He thinks about the kingdom he rules, about the careful balance he maintains between strength and mercy, about the laws he has written to protect both human and non-human citizens. It all seems so complex from within it, a web of decisions and consequences that required constant vigilance. But from here, sitting on this tree with fireflies dancing and grass whispering and leaves chiming overhead, he sees it differently. Perhaps ruling is not about control, but about creating conditions for flourishing. Like this garden, where Aura and Mare set foundations but let growth happen according to its own wisdom. Perhaps his role is not to orchestrate every detail, but to provide the framework, safety, justice, resources, and then trust his people to find their own paths toward peace. The thought relaxes something in his shoulders that has been tight for so long he forgot it could be otherwise. He's been trying to be omniscient, omnipresent, always aware and always acting. But the garden teaches differently. It teaches that systems can run themselves when built with care, that micromanaging life kills the very thing you hope to cultivate. That trust is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. A breeze moves through the meadow, setting all the grass swaying in unison. The fireflies ride the breeze like sailors on a gentle sea, their lights flickering in the moving air. The trees' leaves increase their song, shifting from whisper to a louder susurration that fills the whole meadow with sound like distant applause, like celebration. Ains closes his eyes again and lets the wind touch him. It finds the spaces between his bones, moves through him as if he is just another part of the landscape, no more or less important than the grass, the fireflies, the singing tree. The wind does not recognize rank or power. It touches everything equally, without judgment, without preference. In its democracy of motion, he is freed from being special, and in that freedom, discovers he can finally breathe. Not physically. He has no lungs, no need for air, but metaphorically, spiritually, in whatever way matters for a being who has become more than code, but less than fully human. He breathes in the garden's peace, breathes out the accumulated tension of leadership, breathes in the firefly light and grass, whisper and leaf song, breathes out the fear that he is not enough, has never been enough, will never be enough, will never be enough. The breathing becomes a meditation. In and out, take and release, hold and let go. His consciousness empties itself of thought, becomes simply the awareness of sitting on a warm tree in a meadow full of lights, while wind speaks its ancient language overhead. This is what monks seek, he thinks distantly. This emptiness that is actually fullness. This nothing that contains everything. Time passes in its unmeasurable way. The fireflies continue their dance. The wind continues its conversation with the grass. The tree continues to hold him with patient wooden strength. And Ainz continues to sit, continues to be, continues to learn that existence does not always require action. That sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is allow yourself to be exactly where you are, exactly as you are, without apology or explanation. Eventually, though eventually has no meaning here, his eyes open again. The meadow is brighter somehow, as if his closed-eye meditation has sharpened his vision, made him more receptive to beauty. Each firefly seems more brilliant, each grass blade more distinct. The stars above, visible through gaps in the tree's canopy, pulse with clearer light. Everything has become more itself, and he has become more himself by sitting still enough to truly see. He rises from the tree slowly, running one hand along its warm bark in gratitude. The tree does not respond in words or visible signs, but he feels its acknowledgement anyway, a kind of deep woody satisfaction that he has used what it offered. Trees, he thinks, must be pleased when their branches hold rest, when their shade gives comfort, when their presence matters to someone passing by. This is their purpose, written in rings and roots, and the patient reach toward sky. The luminous stones appear again, marking a new path out of the meadow. Ainz follows them, stepping carefully to avoid crushing the grass more than necessary, though the grass springs back immediately behind him, resilient and forgiving. The path leads downward this time, through a natural archway formed by two trees growing toward each other until their branches intertwined. Beyond the archway, he discovers a grotto. Water drips from somewhere high above, each drop striking a pool with a sound like a bell, clear, pure, resonant. The walls are covered in moss so thick and soft it looks like green velvet. Ferns grow from cracks in the stone, their fronds creating lacy shadows that dance in the light from more of those floating orbs, these ones moving slower here. As if the grotto has its own time signature, its own rhythm. The pool is small, perhaps 10 feet across, its water so clear he can see every pebble on its bottom. Each pebble is different. some smooth, some rough, some striped, some speckled. A collection of stone stories gathered here by the patient work of water over time. The surface of the pool reflects the grotto's ceiling, creating an illusion of depth, as if the pool goes down forever, as if he could fall upward into reflected stone. Ainz kneels by the pool's edge. The moss cushions his bones, soft as any pillow. He looks into the water and sees his reflection, the skull face, the glowing eye sockets, the elegant bones of his undead form. On Earth, this would have been frightening, monstrous. Here, in this grotto, with its patient stones and velvet moss, his reflection seems simply another natural thing, beautiful in its own skeletal way, perfect for what it is. He has spent so much energy hiding this form, projecting images of his former human face, worried about how others perceive him. But the water does not judge. It reflects without commentary, shows him what he is, with the same neutral clarity it would show a flower or a fish or the moon. And in that neutral showing, he finds permission to see himself without the weight of should be. This is what he looks like now. This is what he is. Not human, not entirely his old character from the game, but something new that emerged in the space between worlds. A being of magic and consciousness, of power and surprising gentleness. The Overlord and the office worker merged into this form that serves functions he is still discovering. His reflection wavers as another drop falls, creating expanding rings that distort the image before it settles back into clarity. The distortion in return feels significant somehow. A reminder that even identity is fluid, always moving, never quite fixed despite appearances. He is always in the process of becoming, always learning new aspects of this impossible existence, always discovering what else might be true about who and what he is. The dripping continues its patient percussion, each drop exactly timed by processes older than names. Gravity and surface tension and the slow work of water finding its way through stone. Nothing rushes here. Everything happens at its own necessary pace, and that pace is always exactly right. Ainz dips one finger into the pool, watches new ripples spread from the point of contact. The water is cool and clean, holding no agenda, no expectation. It simply is what it is. H2O arranged in ways that create transparency, fluidity, the medium for reflection. He draws his finger across the surface, making patterns in the water that disappear as quickly as they form. Impermanence made visible. The art of letting go demonstrated by molecules. A small sound makes him look up. In a corner of the grotto, half hidden by ferns, he notices a bird. It is tiny, no larger than his thumb, with feathers that shift between blue and green depending on how the light strikes them. The bird watches him with bright eyes that hold no fear, only curiosity. It tilts its head one way, then the other, making small chirping sounds that echo softly off the grotto walls. "Hello," Ainz says quietly. His voice sounds different here, gentler, more like the man he used to be than the Overlord he's become. The bird chirps in response, a sound like water drops if they could be turned into music. They regard each other across the moss and stone. The tiny bird and the powerful undead, both alive in their own ways, both finding themselves in this underground sanctuary where normal rules bend around beauty. The bird hops along its branch, comes closer, still unafraid. It sings a longer sequence now, a series of notes that rise and fall in patterns that feel almost like language. Ainz listens with complete attention, as if this bird might be teaching him something crucial, something he needs to know to continue his journey through this new existence. And perhaps it is. Perhaps the lesson is simply this: even the smallest being can sing without permission, can offer beauty without payment, can exist in the presence of power without being crushed by it. The bird's fearlessness is not foolishness. It recognizes safety when it finds it. knows instinctively that this skeletal overlord means no harm, carries no threat, despite his capacity for vast destruction. Trust, Heinz realizes. The bird is teaching him about trust. About how it grows, not from guarantees but from consistent gentleness, from the daily practice of choosing care over conquest. His guardians trust him because he has never harmed them, never betrayed them, even when fear might have counseled cruelty. This garden exists because he trusted Ora and Mare to build something beautiful. The bird sings because the grotto has always been safe. Trust is grown slowly, like the moss on these walls, layer upon layer, year upon year, each day of not harm adding to the accumulation until you have something thick and soft enough to cushion falls to provide. Comfort, to create conditions where small birds dare to sing in the presence of death, made sovereign. The bird concludes its song with a flourish, a trill that bounces off the stones and multiplies into harmony with itself. Then it flutters away through the ferns, disappearing into the garden's deeper reaches, leaving Heinz alone again with the dripping water and patient stones and his own reflection looking up from the pool's clear depths. He sits there in the moss for a long time, letting the grotto's particular peace seep into his bones. Each drop adds its voice to the silence. Each breath of air moving through the space brings the scent of wet stone and growing things. The floating orbs drift in their slow circles, casting moving shadows that paint the walls with impermanent art. This is meditation in its truest form, he thinks. Not the forced stillness of trying not to think, but the natural stillness of being so present to what is that thought becomes unnecessary. He is the moss and the water and the stones. He is the bird that was here and the song that remains. He is reflection and reflected both, surface and depth, the one watching and the one being watched. His consciousness expands to fill the grotto, then contracts back to the single point of awareness sitting on soft moss. Expands again. Contains the whole garden, every tree and stream and flower. Contracts to just the sensation of sitting, of existing, of being held by earth and magic. The oscillation becomes a rhythm, big, small, everything, nothing, self, world, separate, connected. In this rhythm he finds something he has been seeking without knowing he sought it. Not answers exactly, not solutions or strategies or plans, but something deeper, a kind of fundamental okayness with existence itself, a yes to being here, like this, now. A yes to the strange journey that brought him from Earth to game to this impossible reality, a yes to transformation, even when it makes you into something you never imagined. Yes to the skeleton in the reflection. Yes to the power that could destroy, but chooses to protect. Yes to the loneliness of being unique and the connection of being part of something larger. Yes to all of it, the whole package, the complete impossible truth of being Heinz. While gone in this moment, in this grotto, in this world that somehow contains both underground gardens and actual stars. The yes settles into him like the final piece of a puzzle he didn't know he was solving. It clicks into place somewhere behind his sternum, in the space where his heart would be if he still had one. Maybe he does have a heart, he thinks. Maybe it's just metaphorical now, made of magic and intention instead of muscle and blood. Maybe transformation doesn't destroy what we were, but translates it into new languages, new forms that serve new purposes. He rises finally, feeling changed though he could not explain exactly how. The moss releases him gently. His reflection fragments as he stands, then settles back into stillness once he moves away. The bird does not return, but its song still echoes faintly in his memory. A gift that keeps giving, a lesson that will take lifetimes to fully understand. The path beckons again, leading him out of the grotto toward what new wonder he cannot guess. But he follows willingly now, Not because he must, not because some schedule demands it, but because he wants to. Because the garden keeps offering and he keeps accepting. Because trust is a dance where both partners move in their own time towards something neither could reach alone. And so he walks on, deeper into peace, closer to rest, learning step by step that sometimes the greatest power isn't allowing yourself to be made gentle by beauty, to be transformed by patience, to be held by a world that asks nothing except that you notice it, that you show up, that you say yes. The path leads into a grove of willow trees whose branches hang so low they create curtains of green that brush the ground. The leaves are narrow and delicate, each one catching light along its edges, turning the whole grove into a space of filtered luminescence. Walking between the willows feels like moving through gentle rain that never wets you, only caresses with whisper-soft touches. Ainz parts the curtain of branches and enters the grove's heart. Here, the ground is covered in clover, its small leaves forming a carpet that gives beneath his feet. White flowers dot the clover, tiny stars at ground level that smell sweet and fresh, like morning even though it is deep night. Bees sleep in the flowers, tucked into petals, their fuzzy bodies still and peaceful. Even the insects rest here, he notices. Even creatures that live such brief, urgent lives find time to pause, to settle into stillness. In the center of the grove stands a structure. Not quite a building, more like an intention made solid. Wooden posts support a roof of woven branches, creating a shelter open on all sides. Inside, cushions are scattered on more of that clover carpet, large, soft cushions covered in fabric that shimmers like water, like moonlight, like something between solid and liquid. Ainz enters the shelter and lowers himself onto the cushions. They compress beneath his weight, then rise around him, creating a nest that holds him perfectly. The sensation is so close to being embraced that his mind supplies the memory of arms, of being held, even though no one is here. The cushions are enough. The presence they create through their careful arrangement is enough. He lies back and looks out through the woven roof at the willow branches beyond, swaying in their constant gentle motion. The branches create patterns against the darker sky lace made of leaves, embroidery stitched by growth and time. His eye sockets track the patterns without trying to make sense of them, letting them be simply what they are, beautiful, temporary, sufficient. A memory surfaces from his old life, unbidden but not unwelcome. He remembers being very small, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, lying in grass on a summer day. His mother was nearby, reading something, her presence a warm gravity that kept him safe. The grass had been scratchy and alive beneath him. The sky above had been impossibly blue. He had watched clouds drift and change, had let his mind wander without purpose or goal, had simply existed in that perfect childhood way where time is infinite and safety is assumed. That memory feels both impossibly distant and immediately present. He has no mother in this world, no childhood, no summer grass in his past. Yet the feeling the memory carries, that sense of being small and safe and allowed to simply be, translates perfectly to this moment. The cushions are his mother's presence. The willow grove is that summer day. Time has bent into a circle, and he has returned to something essential that he lost somewhere in the years of grinding survival. Tears would come now if he had the capacity for them. But instead, the emotion moves through him in other ways. A tremor in his bones, a fluctuation in the magic that animates him, a warmth that spreads from his core outward like liquid gold. He is grieving and grateful simultaneously, mourning what was lost and celebrating what remains, feeling the full weight of transformation and its strange gifts. The willow branches continue their dance. The clover releases its gentle scent. The sleeping bees dream whatever bees dream. Ainz lies in his nest of cushions. feeling more human than he has since becoming undead, more alive than he was in that other life where survival consumed everything, more real than he ever felt as pixels and code. Perhaps this is what healing looks like, he thinks. Not a sudden transformation, not a dramatic revelation, but this slow accumulation of moments where you allow yourself to feel what you have refused to feel, to remember what you have tried to forget, to integrate all the pieces of yourself, past and present, human and other, weak and powerful, into something whole. He has been so afraid of weakness. The Overlord cannot show vulnerability, cannot admit to loneliness or confusion, or the deep ache of being separated from everything familiar. But here, held by cushions in a willow grove, he understands that acknowledging those things is not weakness. It is the opposite. It takes tremendous strength to say, I am lonely sometimes. I am confused. I miss what I lost. I am learning as I go. I do not have all the answers. The truth settles into the nest with him, another cushion supporting his weight. He is doing his best. His guardians know this, love him for it, do not require his perfection. The kingdom he rules is imperfect, but improving. The decisions he makes are sometimes wrong, and that is acceptable because he learns, adjusts, tries again. He is enough, has always been enough, will always be enough, even when he falls short of some imagined ideal. A firefly drifts into the shelter, drawn by the soft glow of the cushions, or perhaps by his own faint luminescence. It settles on his chest, right where his heart would be, its light pulsing in slow rhythm, on, off, here, gone. A tiny beacon declaring its existence to the night, asking nothing, offering everything. Ains watches the firefly's light through his own chest, sees his ribs silhouetted against each pulse. The insect is so small, so fragile, yet it contains this ability to make light from its own body, to transform chemical reactions into something that others can see and marvel at. We are all doing this, he realizes, all transforming what we are made of into signals that say, I am here, I exist, witness me. His own magic is like the firefly's light, a signal, a declaration, a way of being visible in darkness. He's been using it to intimidate, to protect, to accomplish goals. But maybe it can also be simply this, a way of saying, I am here to anyone who needs to see, to know they are not alone in the dark. The firefly lifts off after a time, continues its journey through the grove, leaving a trail of blinks that fade into the distance. Ains remains in his nest, feeling the cushion's embrace, the clover's soft carpet beneath, the willow's protective curtain around. Layer upon layer of care, of intentional comfort, of someone. Aura, Mare, perhaps others, saying through their work, you deserve rest, you deserve beauty, you deserve to be held. Accepting this is harder than any battle he has fought. Easier to believe he must earn peace through achievement, must deserve rest through exhaustion, must prove his worth before allowing care. But the garden asks no proof. The cushions do not demand credentials. The willows do not check his resume before offering shade. They simply give, because giving is their nature, and receiving is his only required response. He practices receiving. Consciously, deliberately, he opens himself to what is being offered. The softness beneath him. The beauty around him. The safety of this hidden space. Each element a gift he allows himself to accept without qualification, without the urge to repay or prove worthy. Just, yes, thank you. I receive this. The practice feels revolutionary. His whole life, both lives, has been about earning, achieving, proving, about making himself valuable enough to deserve existence. But here now, he experiments with a different truth, that existence itself is the only requirement for deserving care, that being is enough, that you do not have to do anything to be worth protecting, worth holding, worth loving. The willow branches sway their agreement. The clover releases another wave of sweetness. The night holds him without judgment. Everything in this grove conspires to teach him this one lesson: you are enough, exactly as you are. Skeleton and magic and confusion and strength, all mixed together in this impossible form. Time passes in its measureless way. The grove breathes. The cushions hold. The sleeping bees continue their rest. And Ainz lies in stillness so complete it feels like prayer, like meditation, like the deepest magic he has ever touched. The magic of allowing yourself to be loved by a world that asks nothing but your presence. Eventually, his consciousness drifts toward something like sleep, though not quite sleep. A state of deep rest where he remains dimly aware of his surroundings but does not actively think or plan or worry. His magic continues its circulation through his bones. His awareness continues its quiet observation. But the part of him that strategizes, that calculates, that maintains the careful facade, that part finally, blessedly, sleeps. In this state, images drift through his mind like clouds. He sees his guardians gathered around a table laughing at something. Aura said, he sees the Sorcerer Kingdom's citizens going about their lives in peace, children playing in squares, merchants trading goods, families sitting down to evening meals. He sees the treaties he has signed, the laws he has written, the careful architecture of safety he has built, and he sees himself, not as he appears in mirrors or reflections, but as he might look from outside, from the perspective of those who know him. Not terrifying. Not all. Powerful. Just someone doing his best, making mistakes, learning, growing, choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier, choosing patience when urgency pulls at him, choosing rest when every old instinct says to keep pushing forward. This version of himself that others see is both stranger and more familiar than his own self-image. It is softer, more uncertain, more human, despite the undead form. It is someone worthy of the loyalty his guardians show, worthy of the peace this garden offers, worthy of rest and care, and the chance to lie in willow shade on soft cushions while night wraps around him like a blanket. The images fade. The almost sleep deepens. His bones settle into complete relaxation. No tension anywhere in his form. The cushions cradle him perfectly. The grove protects him completely. And in this safety, this utter security, something in his deepest self finally lets go of the vigilance it has maintained since the moment he arrived in this world, perhaps since the moment he was born. Into that other world, that other life, the letting go feels like falling, but falling upward into softness instead of down into danger. Like being caught by invisible hands that were always there, always ready, just waiting for him to trust enough to lean into them. The hands of the world itself, perhaps, or of whatever force moved him from game to reality. Or of his own capacity for self-care, finally given permission to act. He floats in the letting go. The willow grove holds him, the garden holds him, the night holds him. And slowly, cell by cell, and bone by bone, he allows himself to be held, to trust the holding, to rest in the certainty that nothing requires his attention right now. Nothing demands his action. Nothing will fall apart if he simply lies here and breathes the night air and exists without purpose. This is the deepest magic, he thinks, from somewhere far inside the almost sleep. Not the spells he commands or the power he wields, but this. The magic of surrender, of trust, of accepting care when it is offered. The magic of being small and safe again, If only for a moment, if only in a willow grove, in an underground garden, while the world spins on without needing his constant intervention. The magic of rest. Real rest. The kind that heals what you did not know was broken, that mends what you did not realize was torn, that fills what has been empty for so long. You forgot what fullness felt like. The cushions hold him. The night holds him. The story itself holds him as it moves toward its gentle conclusion, carrying him like a river carries a leaf with perfect patience toward whatever shore awaits when dawn finally comes. But dawn is far away, so far away, and he has time, all the time in the world, time to rest in willow shade. Time to let the garden teach him what his body already knows. That existence does not require constant effort, that being is enough, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is nothing at all, except remain present to the beauty that surrounds you and says, without words, without conditions, welcome home. The willows whisper their agreement. The clover releases its gentle truth. The sleeping bees dream their small dreams. And Ainz, Overlord of Nazarick, ruler of the Sorcerer Kingdom, former office worker named Suzuki Satoru, learns the most important lesson of all, how to let himself be loved by a world that was waiting, always waiting, for him to stop running long enough to notice. His breathing, metaphorical, unnecessary, but real nonetheless, slows to match the rhythm of the swaying branches. In and out, take and release, accept and surrender. The breath of the garden becomes his breath. The heartbeat of the earth becomes his heartbeat. The peace that permeates every leaf and stone and drop of water becomes his peace, settling into his bones like morning dew, like the first light of dawn, like the answer to a question he has been asking his whole life without knowing the words. And in this settling, this deep rest, this complete surrender to care, he discovers what he came to the garden to find, not answers or solutions or strategies, but simply this, the permission to be tired, the permission to stop, the permission to let the world hold him for a while, to trust that it is strong enough, patient enough, kind enough to bear his weight without complaint. The willow grove accepts his trust, the cushions accept his weight, the night accepts his presence. And Ainz Wolgaun, released from the need to be anything other than what he is, finally rests. As this tale settles into the quiet spaces of your mind, let it carry you deeper into rest. The willow grove remains, eternal in its gentleness, the cushions still holding their soft embrace. The garden breathes around Ainz as he lies in complete peace, and that same breath moves through you now, slow and steady, asking nothing, offering everything. The sound of wind through willow branches becomes a lullaby that knows your name. Each whisper of leaf against leaf is a word in the language of rest, telling you that you are safe, you are held, you are exactly where you need to be. The clover releases its sweetness into air that grows thick with comfort, heavy with the promise that nothing needs your attention, nothing requires your action, nothing waits except the gentle embrace of sleep. Feel the weight of your own body now, how it presses down into whatever holds you. Like Ainz in his nest of cushions, you are being cradled by the world. Your shoulders sink, your spine lengthens and relaxes. Each muscle remembers what it feels like to let go, to release the tension it has carried through the day, through the week, through all the accumulated hours of holding yourself upright against gravity and expectation. The garden stream still flows somewhere in the distance, its voice a constant thread of reassurance. Water over stone, water through roots, water finding its patient way downward, always downward, following the ancient path of least resistance. Your breath follows that same path now, flowing without effort, without thought, simply moving, because that is what breath does when you stop trying to control it. The floating lights in the garden dim slightly, their glow softening to match the approaching depth of rest. They drift slower now, their circles widening, becoming lazy spirals that mesmerize anyone who watches. But your eyes are closing, or have already closed, lids growing heavy as if weighted with the softest sand, with silk, with the accumulated peace of every restful moment that has ever existed. The fireflies have settled into the grass, their lights blinking slower, slower, the rhythm stretching out into longer and longer pauses. On, off, on, off, on. And the pauses between grow until they merge into a darkness that is not frightening but welcoming. A darkness that knows how to hold you safely while you rest. Ains is breathing. That metaphorical breath he does not need but continues anyway, becomes your breathing. In through the nose, soft and cool. Out through the mouth, warm and slow. In, bringing the garden's peace. Out, releasing everything that no longer serves. In, accepting care. Out, letting go of the day. In, filling with safety. Out, emptying into rest. The moss-covered grotto walls still echo with the sound of dripping water, each drop a bell marking time that no longer matters. Seconds become minutes, become hours, become a single eternal moment of now, where past and future fold into this present instant of cushions and softness and the complete absence of demand. You have nowhere to be, nothing to do, no one to impress, no role to maintain, just this, existing, resting, allowing yourself to be held. The silver birch trees stand watch in their grove, patient guardians who have stood for years and will stand for years more, untroubled by the passage of time. Their presence is a promise that you are protected while you rest, that nothing will disturb this peace, that the world will continue its gentle turning, whether you remain alert or surrender to sleep. Your body grows heavier with each breath, arms like stone, but stone that is comfortable, that settles into its place without resistance. Legs like lead, but lead that is warm, that feels right, that has found its perfect position and needs never to move again. Head sinking deeper into whatever pillow or cushion or surface holds it, the skull growing heavy, the jaw unclenching, the face smoothing into the expression of deep peace. The fountain's crystal song continues somewhere in the garden, its melody wrapping around you like silk threads, weaving a cocoon of sound that holds you suspended between waking and sleep. The notes rise and fall in patterns that bypass thought, speaking directly to the ancient parts of your brain that remember safety, that recognize the signals of a world at peace. The white flowers on the clover have closed for the night, their petals folding inward to protect the sweetness inside. You can fold inward too, can close around your own soft center, can protect the part of you that needs rest by simply allowing the closing to happen, allowing the petals of your consciousness to draw together into the bud of sleep. Somewhere, a night bird calls, its voice carrying across the garden in long, slow syllables that stretch like honey, like time itself stretching to accommodate your need for rest. The call is answered by another bird, farther away, and the two voices create a conversation that requires no understanding, only listening, only the passive reception of. Sound that washes over you and through you and carries you deeper into the darkness that welcomes. The grass in the meadow has stopped its whispering, settling into the stillness that comes after wind has passed. Each blade stands in perfect quiet, holding the starlight on its edges, patient and serene. Your thoughts become like that grass, upright but still, present but unmoving, simply existing without the need to bend or sway or react to anything. The willow branches hang motionless now, the curtain of leaves creating a bower of absolute shelter. Within that shelter, Ains has surrendered completely to rest, and you can surrender too. Can let your last grip on wakefulness loosen, can trust that the garden will hold you, that the night will protect you, that sleep is not a falling, but a gentle settling into arms that were always there, always ready, always willing to catch you. Your breath slows even more. So slow now that the space between breaths becomes vast, becomes a landscape of its own where nothing exists except the deep quiet of a body at rest. In and the pause stretches. Out and the pause stretches further. In and you barely notice. Out and you forget to count. The scent of the garden surrounds you. Earth and water and growing things. The perfume of flowers that only bloom at night. The clean smell of moss and stone. These scents sink into your lungs, into your blood, into your bones, carrying with them the chemical signals of safety, of home, of the place where you are allowed to let down every guard and simply be. The cushions beneath Ains have molded perfectly to his form, and whatever holds you now molds perfectly to your form too, accepting your weight without complaint, conforming to every curve and angle, providing support exactly where it is needed. You are held, completely held. Released from the work of holding yourself together, holding yourself up, holding yourself ready for whatever comes next. Nothing comes next except sleep. Sweet, deep, restful sleep that asks no price and demands no performance. Sleep that simply arrives like morning dew, like the tide coming in, like the seasons changing, inevitable, natural, exactly on time, even though time has lost all meaning here in this space between the willow's curtain and the velvet darkness beyond. The last light in the garden fades to the softest glow, barely enough to see by, just enough to know that you are not in total darkness, but in the gentle shadow where rest lives. Your eyelids, already closed, stop fluttering, stop the small movements that indicate mind still active, thoughts still processing. They rest now, completely still, two curtains that have closed for the night and will not open again until morning comes in its own patient time. Your heartbeat slows to its sleeping rhythm, that deep steady pulse that requires no conscious attention, that the body knows how to maintain while you drift into dreams or deeper stillness. Each beat pushes peace through your veins, carries relaxation to every cell, delivers the message that all is well, all is safe, all is exactly as it should be. The garden holds its breath, or perhaps you hold yours, or perhaps there is no difference anymore between you and this place of rest, between your consciousness and the consciousness that grows in trees and flows in water and hangs in the air like moisture, like possibility, like the promise that sleep always keeps. You are sinking now, or floating, or both at once, down into the cushions, up into the darkness, inward to the center of yourself, outward to merge with the night. Direction loses meaning. Up and down trade places. Inside and outside become the same. There is only this sensation of being carried, of being held, of moving slowly and safely into the embrace of sleep. The willow grove will be here when you wake. The garden will continue its patient existence. Ains will rest in his nest of cushions, learning what it means to truly let go. And you are already learning, already letting go, already releasing your grip on wakefulness, like releasing a rope you have been holding so tightly your hands forgot they could open. Your hands open now. Fingers uncurl, palms turn upward in the gesture of receiving, of accepting, of allowing what wants to come. Sleep wants to come. Has been waiting patiently for you to stop resisting, stop thinking, stop trying. Sleep is here now, pressing gently against the borders of consciousness, asking permission to enter, to fill you, to take you to the place where healing happens and dreams bloom and the weary soul finds rest. Give permission. You can give permission by doing nothing at all, by simply allowing your awareness to grow dimmer, quieter, smaller, until it is just a pinpoint of light in vast darkness. And then, not even that, just darkness, just peace, just the infinite soft space where nothing needs to be and everything is exactly enough. The story is ending, or has already ended, or continues forever in some garden you can visit whenever you need rest. Heinz lies in his willow bower. The night stands watch. The earth turns slowly beneath you both, carrying you through darkness toward a dawn that will come in its own time, that requires nothing from you except that you allow yourself to sleep, to rest, to let go completely of every lost thread connecting you to the waking world. Those threads dissolve like sugar in water, like salt in ocean, like morning mist when sun touches it. They were never strong to begin with, were only the habit of holding on, the fear that letting go means falling. Are not falling, have already been caught, are held so safely that falling is impossible, and all that remains is the gentle descent into sleep. Your breath barely moves now, so shallow and slow it is almost imperceptible. The pause between breaths stretches into eternity, a gap wide enough to fall through into dreams, into the darkness that is not empty but full of rest and restoration and the quiet work of healing that happens when consciousness finally steps aside. The garden's heartbeat becomes your heartbeat. The earth's breathing becomes your breathing. The night's vast patience becomes your patience with yourself, with the process of falling asleep, with the journey from waking to rest that cannot be rushed or forced, but only allowed, only permitted, only welcomed when it arrives on its own soft feet. You are so heavy now, so completely weighted down by peace, by the accumulated rest of this story, by the permission to stop trying, heavy enough to sink through the cushions, through the floor, through layers of earth and stone until you rest at the very center of safety, the deepest place where nothing can disturb you, and everything conspires to protect your sleep. Or you are so light now, so released from burden, that you float upward through darkness like a bubble, like a feather, like a wish released to the night sky, light enough to drift on the smallest current of air, to rise towards stars that watch with ancient patient kindness as another weary soul finds rest. Heavy or light, sinking or floating, it does not matter. What matters is that you are letting go, are releasing, are allowing sleep to find you in whatever way it needs to find you. And it is finding you now, is here now, has always been here, waiting with infinite patience for you to stop running, stop resisting, stop thinking you need to stay awake. One more minute, one more hour, one more moment. This is the moment. This is the breath. This is the final letting go. The willow grove fades into darkness. The garden becomes a dream of a garden. Ains becomes a story about rest that carries the truth of rest within it. And you become sleep itself, indistinguishable from the darkness, merged with the peace, dissolved into the vast kindness of a night that asks nothing except that you trust it to hold you until morning. Your last conscious thought drifts away like smoke. The story releases you. The words that carried you here step back and let silence take their place. And in that silence, in that darkness, in that complete surrender to rest, you find what you have been seeking all along. Not escape from yourself, but return to yourself, to the part of you that knows how to rest, has always known, was just waiting for permission to remember. Sleep comes on its own. Let it find you gently, beneath a sky painted in shades of twilight, purple and soft amber, where stars begin their gentle watch, lies a place of unexpected peace. The grand tomb of Nazareth stands not as a fortress of shadow, but as a sanctuary of quiet stone and glowing warmth, where ancient magic hums like a lullaby through marble halls. Here, the undead Overlord Ines, wild-gown, walks slowly through corridors lit by floating orbs of gentle gold, no longer seeking conquest, but simply seeking rest. Perhaps you're settling in after a long day, ready to let your thoughts drift away. If this story brings you comfort, a gentle subscribe helps us create more peaceful tales for nights just like this. Tonight, we follow him to places within his home he'd forgotten existed, places where even an eternal being might finally feel he belongs. And so, our story begins. This quiet legend from the New World tells of a ruler who discovered that true power lies not in dominion, but in the soft acceptance of where one truly belongs. The tale whispers through the peaceful corners of Nazareth, carried on gentle breezes that somehow find their way through ancient stone, speaking of moonlit gardens and libraries filled with silence, of guardians who became family, and of a heart, even one no longer beating, learning what home truly means. Tonight, we follow Ines as he wanders away from his throne, leaving behind the weight of titles and expectations, seeking only the simple comfort of being still. The evening had settled over Nazareth like a blanket of deep blue velvet. Ines stood alone in his chambers, the ceremonial robe set aside, wearing only simple dark fabric that caught the candlelight in gentle waves. Through the tall window, he could see the 6th floor's eternal sky, painted tonight in colors of dusk that never quite gave way to full darkness. He felt tired, not in body, for his form knew no exhaustion, but in the quiet spaces of his consciousness where thoughts moved like slow water. He'd been Overlord, Guildmaster, Supreme Being for so long. The memories of his human life had become soft and blurred, like watercolors left in gentle rain. He remembered laughter, remembered friends gathering around glowing screens, remembered the simple joy of being part of something. But that world was gone, dissolved like morning mist, and he stood here in a tomb that had become a kingdom, surrounded by guardians who called him master, when perhaps all he truly wanted was to be called friend. Tonight, something whispered to him to walk. Not through the great halls where his floor guardians waited with devoted eyes. Not to the treasury where mountains of gold caught torchlight and cold glimmers, but to the forgotten places, the quiet corners, the spaces in Nazareth that held peace like water holds light. Ines moved to the doorway, his steps making no sound against the polished stone. The corridor stretched before him, lit by floating orbs that pulsed with the softest amber glow, like fireflies caught in honey. The air felt different here, away from the throne room's vast spaces. It felt close, gentle, almost like being held. He walked past tapestries that swayed in breezes that shouldn't exist, their threads woven in patterns of forests and streams, meadows and moonlight. His hand trailed along the cool stone wall, feeling the ancient strength of it, the way it had stood through centuries, patient and unchanging. The touch grounded him somehow, reminded him that some things simply exist, without purpose or struggle, and that is enough. The corridor opened into a chamber he rarely visited, the autumn garden, suspended in eternal sunset. Here, Beneath a spelled sky of orange and pink, trees grew with leaves of copper and gold. They rustled constantly, though no wind moved through the enclosed space, creating a sound like distant rainfall or like the ocean heard through a seashell. The ground beneath his feet became soft earth, and the air smelled of wood smoke and ripening fruit, of things coming to gentle rest after a long season of growth. Ainz walked slowly between the trees, watching how the golden light filtered through the leaves, creating patterns on the ground that shifted and swayed. Small stone pathways wound between flower beds, where chrysanthemums bloomed in shades of cream and rust, their petals heavy with the weight of their own beauty. A stream ran through the center of the garden, its water clear and slow, reflecting the eternal autumn sky above. He found a bench carved from pale wood, worn smooth by time and touch, positioned beside the stream where the water made its quietest sound. Ainz sat, feeling the solid warmth of the wood beneath him, and for a long moment he simply watched the water flow. It moved without hurry, following the gentle slope of its bed, accepting each curve and stone with liquid grace. There was a lesson in that, he thought, in flowing rather than fighting, in following the path that felt most natural. A memory surfaced, unbidden but welcome. He remembered autumn evenings in his old life, remembered walking through parks where leaves crunched underfoot, remembered the smell of sweet potatoes roasting at street vendors' carts. He remembered feeling small but safe, part of a world that moved in familiar rhythms. The memory didn't hurt tonight. It felt like a gift, like finding a photograph you thought was lost. Time passed in the way it does when you're not watching for it, each moment settling into the next like stones built in a cairn. The stream continued its gentle song, and the leaves whispered their endless conversation, and Ainz sat very still, letting peace find him in increments so small he barely noticed each one arriving. Eventually, he rose and walked deeper into the garden, following a path that curved between maple trees whose branches formed a canopy overhead. The light here was softer, filtered through layers of golden leaves, and the air felt warmer, almost humid, like being inside an embrace. Mushrooms grew in the shadows, small white caps that glowed with their own faint luminescence, creating tiny constellations on the forest floor. The path led him to a small pavilion, open on all sides, with a roof of curved wood that sheltered a single low table and cushions arranged for sitting. Paper lanterns hung from the eaves, their light the color of honey, casting circles of warmth into the approaching twilight. Ainz stepped up onto the wooden platform, feeling it solid beneath his feet, and settled onto one of the cushions. From here, he could see the whole garden spread before him, the trees standing like patient guardians, the stream catching light in silver threads, the flowers nodding in their beds. Everything was exactly as it should be. Nothing demanded his attention or his decision or his power. He was simply there, and that was enough. A sound reached him. Soft footsteps on the garden path. Ainz turned to see Albedo approaching, but her usual intensity was absent tonight. She wore a simple white robe instead of her formal dress, and her wings were folded gently against her back. She carried a tray with a teapot and cups, steam rising in delicate wisps that caught the lantern light. "My lord," she said, her voice quiet, respectful of the garden's peace. "I thought you might appreciate some tea." Ainz gestured to the cushion across from him, and Albedo settled there with fluid grace. She poured the tea. It was green tea, he could tell from the color and the gentle grassy scent that rose with the steam. She passed him a cup, and though he couldn't taste it, he accepted the warmth of the ceramic against his palms, the ritual of sharing this moment. "Thank you," he said simply. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that exists between those who need no words to understand one another. Albedo sipped her tea slowly, her golden eyes soft as they watched the garden's eternal autumn. Ainz held his cup, feeling the heat of it, watching the steam rise and dissolve into the honeyed air. "This place is peaceful," Albedo said after a while. "I forget it exists sometimes, in the rush of our duties." "I forget many things," Heinz replied. "But tonight I remembered to look for quiet." "Then I'm glad," she said, and her smile was gentle, without the edge of desperate devotion he sometimes saw there. Tonight she was simply a companion sharing tea in a garden, and that was gift enough. They talked of small things, the beauty of the maple leaves, the pleasant sound of the stream, the way the lantern light made everything feel safe and contained. Their conversation flowed like the water nearby, without force or direction, simply following its natural course. And slowly, Ains felt something loosen in his chest, some knot he hadn't known he was carrying. When the tea was finished, Albedo gathered the cups and stood. "Rest well, my lord," she said. "Nazarick holds you safe." "Thank you, Albedo," he said, and meant it with the fullness of whatever feeling still lived in his undead form. She left quietly, and Ains remained in the pavilion as the garden's light slowly deepened toward evening. The lanterns glowed brighter as the sky darkened, creating small islands of warmth in the gathering dusk. The stream's song continued, patient and eternal, and the leaves whispered their stories to the gentle air. Eventually, Ains rose and continued his walk, following paths he'd never explored, discovering corners of his home he'd never noticed. He found a small library tucked between two larger chambers, its shelves holding books with worn spines and pages that smelled of vanilla and old paper. Armchairs sat before a fireplace where flames burned without consuming their fuel, crackling softly, sending up sparks that vanished into the chimney's darkness. He pulled a book from the shelf, a collection of poetry, its pages thin as whispers. Settling into one of the chairs, Heinz opened the book and read by firelight. The poem spoke of simple things, gardens in rain, the first star of evening, the comfort of returning home after a long journey. Each one was a small gift of beauty, asking nothing in return. The fire crackled and popped, a rhythm that felt like heartbeat, like breathing. The chair cradled him in leather softness, and the warmth of the flames reached him in gentle waves. Time dissolved into the act of turning pages, of reading words that had been written by someone long gone, someone who had known beauty and wanted to share it. One poem stayed with him. The moon rises without asking permission. The stream flows without wondering if it should. The tree grows toward light because that is its nature. And you, weary traveler, you are allowed to rest, simply because you are tired, no other reason needed. Heinz read those lines 3 times, feeling them settle into the quiet spaces of his awareness. He was allowed to rest, not because he had earned it or because his duties permitted it, but simply because rest was a thing that existed in the world, available to all who needed it. He closed the book gently and returned it to its shelf. The library felt like a secret being kept just for him, a place outside of time where nothing was required except presence. He stood for a moment, listening to the fire's voice, feeling the accumulated warmth of centuries of peace that had soaked into these walls. When he left the library, Heinz found himself in a corridor he didn't recognize. The walls here were made of smooth white stone that seemed to glow from within, casting light that was soft and even, like moonlight through fog. Arched doorways opened on either side, and through them he glimpsed rooms filled with different kinds of beauty. A conservatory where night-blooming flowers released perfume into still air. A music room where instruments sat ready, gleaming in the gentle light. A solarium where a fountain played its water games in endless repetition. He chose the conservatory and stepped inside. The ceiling was glass, though beyond it was only the spell-maintained sky of Nazarick's 6th floor, painted tonight in deep navy blue scattered with stars that pulsed like breathing. The flowers here bloomed in shades of white and pale purple, their petals luminous against dark leaves. The air was thick with their scent, jasmine and night-blooming cereus, honeysuckle and moonflower, a fragrance that spoke of midnight gardens and secret meetings and love letters written by moonlight. Gravel paths wound between the flower beds, crunching softly beneath his feet. Ainz walked slowly, stopping often to examine a particular bloom, to watch how the starlight caught on dewdrops that clung to petals and leaves. Everything here grew in patient abundance, asking nothing, giving beauty simply because that was its nature. He found a stone bench positioned beneath a trellis where white roses grew, their blooms as large as his palm, their petals soft as silk. He sat there, surrounded by their scent, by the quiet respiration of the garden, and let himself simply be. No thoughts of strategy or power or the weight of his role. Just the flowers, the stars, the gentle presence of growth and life continuing its patient work. Time moved around him like water around a stone. The flowers breathed their perfume into the night. The stars watched without judgment. The gravel beneath his feet held the memory of countless other footsteps, all dissolved into the present moment where everything was exactly as it needed to be. A firefly, or something that mimicked a firefly's gentle pulsing light, drifted past his vision. Then another. Soon there were dozens of them, floating through the conservatory like pieces of fallen stars, their soft green-gold light creating patterns in the darkness. They moved with no apparent purpose, simply existing, their light a gift they gave without expectation of return. Ainz watched them drift and dance, mesmerized by their simple grace. One landed on his hand, its light pulsing in slow rhythm, and he held very still, honored by this small trust. The light felt warm against his palm, though that was likely imagination. But it didn't matter. The feeling was real enough. When the firefly flew away, rejoining its companions in their aimless dance, Ainz stood and continued his wandering. He left the conservatory and found himself in a hallway where windows looked out onto views that couldn't possibly exist within Nazarik's structure. A moonlit ocean, a field of lavender stretching to distant hills, a forest glade where deer grazed in peaceful silence. These were windows to impossible elsewheres, crafted by magic or desire, or the accumulated dreams of those who had built this place. He paused at each window, looking out at these peaceful scenes, and felt something in himself responding to their tranquility. Part of him wanted to step through the glass, to walk those shores and fields and forests. But another part recognized that these views were gifts of another kind. They brought the peace of those places here, made them accessible without the need to leave the safety of these walls. The hallway ended at a circular room with a domed ceiling painted like the night sky, complete with constellations arranged in patterns both familiar and strange. In the center of the room stood a single object, a small tree, perhaps a cherry tree, its branches heavy with blossoms that glowed with their own soft pink light. The blossoms fell constantly, a gentle rain of petals that disappeared before they touched the floor, only to reappear on the branches above, an endless cycle of blooming and falling and blooming again. Ainz stood beneath the eternal cherry tree, watching the petals fall and reform in their peaceful cycle. The soft pink glow painted everything in warm light, making the domed room feel like the inside of a shell, protected and complete. He reached out and let a falling petal touch his palm, feeling it dissolve into light, into warmth, into nothing but the memory of something beautiful having existed. This tree, he realized, was like Nazarik itself, a place caught between worlds, neither fully one thing nor another, but beautiful in its own strange permanence. The blossoms would fall forever, and forever they would return. There was comfort in that continuity, in the knowledge that some things persisted simply because they chose to exist. He circled the tree slowly, watching how the light shifted as he moved, how each angle revealed new details. The texture of the bark, smooth as river stones. The way. Branches curved like dancers frozen mid-leap. The darkness beyond the pink glow, deep and restful. The petals continued their gentle rain, a whisper of movement in the still air, and Heinz felt himself becoming part of this cycle, his presence just another element in the room's careful balance. After a time that felt both short and infinite, he left the cherry tree to its eternal blooming and found another corridor, this one sloping gently downward. The walls here were made of dark blue stone that sparkled with veins of silver like night sky captured in rock. Lanterns hung at intervals, their flames burning in shades of pale blue, casting light that felt cool and lunar. The air grew slightly cooler as he descended, and he caught the scent of water. Not the fresh stream of the autumn garden, but something deeper, more mineral. The corridor opened into a vast cavern, and Heinz stepped out onto a stone bridge that arched over an underground lake. The lake stretched into darkness on all sides, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the lights that floated above it like stars reflected in night water. The ceiling of the cavern was high and lost in shadow, and the only sounds were the occasional drip of water from somewhere in the darkness and his own footsteps on the bridge's ancient stone. Halfway across the bridge, Ains stopped and looked down at the water. It was so clear he could see straight down to the bottom, where white sand made patterns like wind-swept dunes. Small fish swam there, their scales catching light in silver flashes, moving in schools that shifted and turned with perfect synchronization, like thoughts flowing through a single mind. The water's stillness called to something in him. It looked like peace made liquid, like all the quiet moments of the world had been gathered and given form. He wanted to touch it, to feel that coolness against his hand, to see if peace could be held, even for a moment. A stairway descended from the bridge to the water's edge. Heinz followed it down, his hand trailing along the stone wall, feeling the coolness and slight dampness of it. At the bottom, a small beach of white sand bordered the lake, so fine it felt like powder beneath his feet. He knelt at the water's edge and dipped his fingers into it. The temperature was perfect, not cold, not warm, but some perfect middle point that felt like touching nothing at all. Ripples spread from his hand, perfect circles expanding across the mirror surface, carrying his touch outward into the darkness. Ains sat on the sand, drawing his knees up, his fingers still trailing in the water. The underground lake held a different kind of peace than the autumn garden or the cherry tree room. This was the peace of deep places, of stone that had stood since the earth's first days, of water that had carved its space through patient centuries. It asked nothing and offered everything: silence, coolness, the gentle certainty of its existence. He thought about the new world above, about the responsibilities waiting for him, about the guardians who looked to him for leadership and purpose. All of that felt distant now, separated from him by layers of stone and water and the special gravity of this place. Here, he was just a being sitting beside dark water, allowed to rest without explanation or excuse. Time passed in the way it does in deep places, where darkness makes minutes and hours irrelevant. The fish continued their synchronized swimming. Water dripped somewhere in the cave's vastness. The floating lights above the lake pulsed gently, like the breathing of some vast, sleeping creature. Eventually, the presence joined him, Cocytus, the insectoid warrior of the 5th floor, approaching with steps careful not to disturb the lake's peace. He carried his usual weapons, but held them loosely, without threat or tension. In the blue light, his ice-covered body sparkled like frozen stars. "Lord." "Eins," Cocytus said, his breath creating small clouds in the cool air. "I." Thought, "I might find you here." Cositus, Ainz acknowledged, gesturing to the sand beside him. Join me if you wish. The guardian settled onto the beach, his large form somehow managing gentleness. His weapons lay carefully aside. Together they sat in comfortable silence, two beings who knew each other well enough that words were optional. This place reminds of home, Cositus said after a while. The ice caves of Niflheim, cold and quiet and safe. Home, Ainz repeated, tasting the word. I'm not always certain where that is anymore. Home is where your people are, Cositus said, his words slow and thoughtful. Where you are known and accepted, not for what you are known and accepted, not for. Ainz considered this, watching the fish swim their endless patterns. Then perhaps home is here, he said, in Nazarick, with all of you. Yes, Lord, Ainz, we are your home, and you are ours. The words settled over them like the cool air, like the gentle light, like the peace of deep water and ancient stone. They sat together, guardian and master, friend and friend, letting the underground lake hold them in its patient embrace. After a time, Cositus rose and bowed, a gesture of respect that somehow also conveyed affection. Rest. Well, Lord, Ainz, the tomb watches over you. Thank you, my friend, Ainz said, and watched as Cositus climbed the stairs back to the bridge, his footsteps fading into the cavern's vastness. Alone again, Ainz stood and walked along the lake's edge, following the curve of the shore. The sand gave way to smooth stone, and he found himself in a smaller cave that branched off from the main cavern. Here, crystals grew from the walls and ceiling, each one catching and multiplying the blue light until the whole space glowed like the inside of a geode. He touched one of the crystals, feeling its cool, smooth surface, its edges worn gentle by time and water. The crystal hummed beneath his fingers, a sound so low it was more feeling than hearing, a vibration that spoke of the earth's deep bones, of forces that shaped stone and time and the foundations of the world. In the crystal's surface, Ainz could see his reflection, distorted but recognizable. The skull face, the robes, the red points of light that served as eyes. But tonight, looking at this reflection in stone that had grown for centuries, he didn't see a monster or an overlord. He saw simply himself, whatever that meant, allowed to exist without justification. He stayed in the crystal cave for a long while, touching different stones, feeling their various hums and vibrations, learning the language they spoke in frequencies below words. Each crystal told a story of patience, of growth measured in decades, of beauty that emerged simply because conditions allowed it. There was wisdom in that, and growing not by force, but by being given time and space, and the right environment. When he finally left the caves, climbing back up the sloping corridor toward the main floors of Nazarick, Ainz felt something had shifted in him. The weight he'd carried felt lighter, or perhaps he'd simply grown stronger in his ability to carry it. The darkness ahead didn't feel as absolute. He had found pockets of peace within his home, and knowing they existed made everything else feel more bearable. The corridor opened into a garden courtyard he'd never seen before, though it must have always been there, waiting to be discovered. This garden was different from the autumn garden. Smaller, more intimate, arranged around a single ancient oak tree whose branches spread like protective arms above carefully tended beds of night-blooming flowers. The oak was enormous, its trunk wider than Ainz could reach around, its bark deeply furrowed with age. Fireflies, real or magical, he couldn't tell, drifted through its branches, their lights creating constellations that shifted and reformed with their movement. The grass beneath the tree was thick and soft, almost like carpet, and when Ein stepped onto it, he felt a gentle give, a yielding that somehow also supported. He walked to the oak's base and placed his hand against the bark, feeling the life in it, the slow, patient strength of something that had stood for so long it had become part of the landscape's bones. The tree felt warm beneath his palm, or perhaps it was just the contrast with the cool air, but warmth was what he felt. Comfort, acceptance, the wordless welcome of something that had seen centuries pass and remained, still growing, still reaching toward light. Roots of the oak broke through the grass in places, creating natural seats and resting places. Ein settled into one of these root chairs, leaning back against the trunk, looking up through the branches at the spell-maintained sky above. Stars shone between the leaves, and the fireflies wove their patterns, and somewhere nearby, a cricket sang its patient song. This felt like the heart of Nazareth, he thought, not the throne room with its grand spaces and formal bower. Not the treasury with its accumulated wealth, but here, under this ancient tree, in a garden that asked nothing except that he sit and rest and be present. This was the soul of home, the quiet center where everything else orbited. His thoughts drifted like the fireflies, touching on memories without dwelling, acknowledging feelings without judging them. He thought of his guild members, scattered now to wherever the old world's players had gone. He thought of his human life, that distant dream of someone he'd been. He thought of the guardians, each one precious in their unique way, each one part of a strange family he'd found in this place between worlds. But mostly he thought of nothing in particular, letting his mind rest like his body rested, held by the oak tree's patient strength, cradled in grass and starlight and the gentle movement of air through leaves. Time passed, or didn't pass, or became something other than the linear march from moment to moment. The crickets sang. The fireflies danced. The oak tree stood firm and eternal, and Ein sat in its embrace, learning what it meant to simply be, without agenda or purpose or role. A soft footstep on grass brought him back to awareness. Shelter approached, but unlike her usual dramatic presence, tonight she moved quietly, respectfully. She wore a simple dress of pale blue, and her usual wild energy was gentle to something softer, more thoughtful. "My lord," she said, settling onto the grass near his feet. "I wondered where you'd gone." "Just walking," Ein said, "finding places I'd forgotten existed." "They're beautiful," Sheltir said, looking around the garden with appreciation in her eyes. "I never come here." "I should, more often." "We all should," Ains agreed. "We spend so much time on grand designs that we forget the simple spaces." They sat together beneath the oak, guardian and master, watching the fireflies trace their patterns in the darkness. Sheltir leaned against the tree near him, her head tilted back to see the stars between leaves, and for once she seemed content simply to exist beside him, without need or want or desperate devotion. "Do you ever wonder," Sheltir asked quietly, "what we're all for? Not our duties or roles, but what we're for, underneath all that?" Hines considered the question, watching a firefly land on a nearby leaf. "I think we're for this," he said finally. "For moments like this. For sitting under trees and watching fireflies and being present with those we care for. Everything else, the strategy, the power, the grand plans, they're just ways of protecting these quiet moments." "That's a nice thought," Sheltir said and smiled. Not her usual sharp smile, but something genuine and soft. "Thank you, my lord." "Thank you for finding me," Heinz replied. She stayed a while longer, then rose and bowed and left him to his contemplation, disappearing back into Nazarik's corridors like a dream fading at dawn. And Ains remained under the oak tree, held in its ancient peace, feeling the night deepen around him like water rising, gentle and complete. The night deepened around Nazarik, though within its protected walls, time moved to its own rhythm, unbound by the outside world's demands. Ains eventually rose from his seat among the oak's roots, feeling the tree's presence like a blessing as he stepped back onto the garden path. The fireflies followed him for a few steps, as if seeing him off, before returning to their dance among the branches. He found himself walking through corridors he recognized now, though seeing them with new eyes. A tapestry he'd passed 1,000 times revealed details he'd never noticed. A small bird hidden in painted branches, a stream that seemed to move if he didn't look directly at it, colors that shifted between gold and green depending on the angle of light. Everything in Nazarik, he realized, held these small secrets, these quiet beauties waiting to be discovered by those who took time to truly see. The corridor opened into a room filled with books, but not a grand library like the one he'd visited earlier. This was smaller, cozier, more like a study than a cathedral to learning. Shelves lined the walls, filled with volumes that looked well-loved, their spines creased, their pages dog-eared. A fire burned in a small hearth, and 2 deep armchairs faced it, with a low table between them holding a chess set frozen mid-game. Ains entered and moved to the shelves, running his fingers along the spines. These were books about simple things, gardening, poetry, collections of folk tales from worlds that no longer existed. He pulled one out at random, a thin volume bound in green cloth, and opened it to find illustrations of different types of clouds, each one labeled with a name that sounded like music: cirrus, cumulus, nimbostratus, altocumulus. He settled into one of the armchairs and paged through the book slowly, studying each illustration, reading the descriptions of how each cloud formed, what weather it foretold, how it moved through the sky. There was something peaceful about this catalogue of ephemeral things, these shapes that existed for hours or days before dissolving back into invisible vapor. Even clouds, the book seemed to say, had their moment of beauty before returning to the formless sky. The fire crackled companionably, and Ains let himself sink deeper into the chair's embrace. The leather was soft and warm, molded by years of other readers who had sat here, perhaps reading this same book about clouds, perhaps thinking similar thoughts about beauty and impermanence, and the comfort of small, knowable things. He must have dozed or whatever passed for sleep in his undead consciousness, because when he next became aware, the fire had burned lower and softer, and someone had placed a blanket over him. He looked down at it, a knitted throw in shades of cream and brown, and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. Someone had noticed him resting and had cared enough to ensure his comfort. That simple act of kindness touched something deep in him. Rising, Ains folded the blanket carefully and draped it over the chair's arm for the next person who might need it. He returned the cloud book to its shelf and left the study, carrying with him the memory of its peace, the fire's warmth, the unnamed kindness of the blanket. The corridors had grown quieter, as if Nazarik itself was settling towards sleep. The lights had dimmed to their lowest, creating pools of soft amber glow separated by stretches of gentle shadow. Ains walked through this landscape of light and dark, feeling no urgency, no destination calling him. He was simply walking, simply being, and that was enough. He passed the entrance to the Amphitheater of Heroes, where the statues of past guild members stood in eternal vigil. Normally he avoided this place, the memories it stirred too sharp, too sad. But tonight, drawn by some impulse he didn't question, he entered. The statues rose around him, each one capturing a friend, a companion, a person who had mattered. In the dim light, they looked almost alive, as if they might step down from their pedestals and resume the conversations that had ended so long ago. Heinz walked among them slowly, greeting each one in his mind, remembering shared battles and stupid jokes and moments of unexpected beauty in a game that had meant more than any of them had realized at the time. He stalked before one statue in particular. Touch Me, the warrior who had saved him, who had shown him that strength could be used to protect rather than dominate. The statue captured him perfectly. The noble bearing, the kind eyes behind the helmet's visor, the sword held ready but not threatening. "I wish you could see this," Heinz said softly to the stone figure. "The tomb we built together. It's become more than we imagined. It's become home." The statue offered no answer, but Heinz didn't need one. Speaking the words was enough. Speaking the words was enough. Acknowledging the connection was enough. The grief he carried had softened over time, becoming something gentler. Not forgetting, but a kind of grateful remembering, an appreciation for what had been rather than mourning for what was lost. He moved to the center of the amphitheater and looked up at the domed ceiling where spellwork created the illusion of a night sky. But this wasn't the eternal sky of the 6th floor. This was a recording, a memory captured from the real world above Nazarick, showing the actual stars as they wheeled through their ancient paths. Seeing them, Ains felt connected to something larger, to the vast clockwork of the universe that moved according to laws deeper than magic or power. The stars reminded him that he was small, that his concerns, however weighty they felt, were tiny against the backdrop of cosmic time and space. But rather than making him feel insignificant, this brought comfort. He was part of something enormous, something that had existed long before him and would continue long after. He was a note in an infinite symphony, brief but necessary, his music contributing to the whole. He sat cross-legged on the amphitheater floor and simply watched the stars turn their slow circles above. The stone beneath him was cool and solid, grounding him to this place, to this moment. His breathing, unnecessary but habitual, fell into a slow rhythm that matched some internal tide. Everything was exactly as it should be. Time spiraled and expanded. The stars wheeled overhead. The stone held him in patient support. And Ains sat at the center of it all, a point of stillness, a place where peace gathered and deepened and became something he could almost touch. When he finally stood and left the amphitheater, he carried with him the star's blessing, the stone's patience, and the memory of friends who had shaped him into someone capable of appreciating these quiet gifts. The corridors led him upward, through levels he hadn't visited in years. He found a greenhouse where impossible plants grew under spelled sunlight. Ferns from prehistoric eras, flowers from worlds that existed only in fantasy, trees that bore fruit made of pure light. The air here was thick and humid, alive with the scent of growing things, and when Ains breathed it in, he tasted green and growing, and the patient work of life expressing itself in infinite variations. He walked the greenhouse path slowly, stopping to examine each plant, to touch leaves that felt like velvet or silk or rough bark, to watch flowers open and close in rhythms unrelated to any sun's rising or setting. Here was life in its most essential form, growing because that was what life did, beautiful because beauty was its nature, asking nothing except the conditions it needed to thrive. A butterfly landed on his hand, its wings a pattern of blues and golds that seemed to shift and change as he watched. It sat there for a long moment, antennae quivering, before lifting off and disappearing into the green abundance. Ainz watched it go, feeling honored by this brief connection, this moment of trust between beings so different they should barely acknowledge each other's existence. The greenhouse led to a conservatory where musical instruments hung from the ceiling on nearly invisible threads, turning slowly in a breeze he couldn't feel, occasionally touching each other to create soft chiming notes. The sound was random but somehow melodic, like wind chimes or distant church bells, each note ringing clear and then fading into silence before the next one arrived. Ainz stood in the center of this room and listened to the music make itself. There was something profound in this beauty that emerged without intention, without a composer or performer, just the random collision of objects designed to make pleasant sounds when touched. Perhaps, he thought, the universe itself worked this way, creating beauty not through grand design but through the infinite accidents of things encountering each other in space and time. The chiming continued, patient and random and somehow perfect. Ainz let it wash over him, let each note arrive and dissolve without trying to predict the next one, without trying to find a pattern. Just receiving each sound as a gift, separate and complete. Eventually the corridor called him onward, and he left the musical room to its own devices, carrying with him the memory of those chimes, those unexpected bells ringing in darkness. The path led him to a room he'd never seen before. A bathhouse, its pools carved from pale stone, filled with water that steamed gently in the cool air. The pools glowed from within, lit by some spell or mineral that made the water luminous, each pool a different color, one amber like honey, one blue like twilight, one green like spring leaves, one rose pink like sunset. No one else was there. The bathhouse waited in patient silence, its waters undisturbed, its purpose simply to exist as a place of cleansing and rest. Ainz approached the amber pool and knelt at its edge, dipping his hand into the water. It was perfectly warm, blood temperature, the kind of warmth that feels like nothing because it matches your own heat exactly. He could see straight to the bottom of the pool, where tiles created a mosaic of geometric patterns, orderly and balanced. Though his undead form had no need of bathing, something called him to enter the water. He removed his robes and descended the steps cut into the pool's side, feeling the water rise around him, ankles, knees, waist, chest, until he was immersed to his shoulders in that perfect warmth. The sensation was extraordinary. The water held him completely, supporting his weight, allowing him to float without effort. The amber glow surrounded him, penetrating his bones, and though he knew this was illusion, that his skeleton form couldn't actually feel warmth the way living flesh did, something in him responded as if it could. He felt held, cradled, cared for by this water that asked nothing in return. Ainz lay back and let himself float, arms spread, face turned up toward the ceiling where more tiles created pictures of clouds and birds and angels floating in eternal sky. The water covered his ears, muting all sound except the deep hum of his own consciousness, creating a silence that was somehow full rather than empty. He floated in that amber warmth, feeling the water rock him gently in rhythms too subtle to predict, and something in him finally fully relaxed. The last knot of tension dissolved. The last guard came down. He was safe here. He was held. He was allowed to rest without reservation or fear. Time stopped meaning anything. He might have floated for minutes or hours. The water held him constant, patient, asking nothing, and Ainz simply existed, suspended in warmth and light and the profound peace of being completely, entirely, finally safe. When he eventually emerged from the pool, water streaming from his bones, he felt renewed in a way that transcended mere physical cleansing. He felt washed of accumulated worry, rinsed of unnecessary burdens, returned to some essential simplicity he'd forgotten he possessed. He dressed slowly, the fabric of his robes feeling different now, softer somehow, or perhaps he was simply more present to notice their texture. The bathhouse remained peaceful as he left it, the pools glowing in their various colors, waiting for the next person who might need their gift of warmth and peace. The corridors beyond were quieter still, as if all of Nazarick had settled into its deepest rest. The lights were dim now, barely more than suggestions of illumination, creating a twilight world where everything was soft edges and gentle shadows. Ains walked slowly, savoring each step, each breath, each moment of this peaceful wandering. He found himself approaching his private chambers, but before entering, he noticed one more doorway he'd never explored. A small door set into the wall, almost hidden by shadow. Curious, he opened it and found a narrow staircase spiraling upward. He climbed, his hand trailing along the cool stone wall, following the stairs as they curved in rows through the heart of Nazarick. The stairs ended at another door, and when Ains pushed it open, he stepped out onto a rooftop terrace he'd never known existed. The space was small and intimate, enclosed by low walls, with a wooden bench positioned to face eastward. Potted plants grew here, lavender and jasmine, rosemary and night-blooming stock, their combined fragrances creating a perfume that spoke of peace and rest and the gentle closing of day. The sky above this terrace was Nazarick's truest sky, showing the actual night beyond the tomb's protection. Stars scattered across darkness, brilliant and distant, ancient light traveling through space to reach this moment, this place, this particular pair of eyes watching from below. The moon hung low on the horizon, nearly full, its light silver and cool and infinitely gentle. Ains settled onto the bench and looked out at the night. A breeze moved across the terrace, carrying the scent of the planted herbs, ruffling his robes, touching his skull with the gentleness of a blessing. The air tasted of darkness and growing things, and the particular peace that belongs to late hours when the world is quieted and there's nothing left to do except rest. He could see for miles from this high place, the forests surrounding Nazarick, the distant mountains dark against the star-filled sky, the world spread out like a tapestry woven from shadow and moonlight. Everything was still, peaceful, exactly as it should be. The new world slept, and Nazarick watched over it, and Ains watched over Nazarick, and the stars watched over everything, patient and eternal in their distant vigil. The bench was comfortable, worn smooth by weather and time, and Ains let himself lean back against the wall behind it. The stone was still warm from whatever sun had touched it during the day, and that warmth seeped into him, slow and steady and comforting. His hands rested in his lap, his breathing, that unnecessary habit, slow to match the rhythm of the breeze, the pulse of the night. One by one, the guardians had found him throughout his wandering, Albedo with her tea, Cositis at the underground lake, Shalteri beneath the oak tree. Each encounter had been gentle, respectful, exactly what he needed in that moment. They knew him, he realized. They saw him not just as their master, but as himself, whatever that meant. They offered him not just loyalty, but companionship, not just service, but care. And Nazarick itself had revealed its secrets to him tonight. The autumn garden with its eternal sunset, the cherry tree room with its endless cycle of blooming, the underground lake holding its deep peace, the oak tree offering its ancient strength, the bathhouse with its warm embrace. And now this terrace where earth and sky met in perfect balance. Each place had been a gift, a reminder that home was not just the grand halls and formal spaces, but these quiet corners where peace lived and grew and waited to be discovered. Ains looked up at the stars and felt their light touching him, photons that had traveled for years or centuries just to arrive at this exact moment. He was part of that larger story, connected to everything. The stars, the moon, the earth below, the guardians sleeping in their chambers, the plants growing on this terrace, the breeze moving through the night. Everything was woven together in a web so vast and intricate that no single strand could be removed without changing the whole. The moon rose higher, its light growing stronger, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. The herbs released their fragrance in waves, responding to the cooling air, to the dew beginning to form on their leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird sang a few notes, then fell silent. The world was settling, layer by layer, into its deepest rest. Ains felt his own consciousness beginning to drift, thoughts becoming slower, softer, less defined. He didn't fight it. He let himself settle like the world was settling, let peace find him in increments so small they were barely noticeable. A loosening here, a softening there, everything gradually releasing until he was held only by the bench beneath him, the wall behind him, the night surrounding him. His last thought before rest truly found him was simple. He was home. Not because he had arrived somewhere, but because he had finally allowed himself to be where he already was. Home wasn't a destination. It was this acceptance, this peace, this moment of being exactly where he needed to be. The stars wheeled overhead. The moon climbed its arc across the sky. The herbs breathed their perfume into the darkness. And Ainswolgaon, Overlord and Wanderer, master and friend, rested on a rooftop terrace in the heart of his home, held by peace and darkness and the infinite gentleness of night. As this tale settles into the quiet spaces of your awareness, let it carry you with it into rest. Feel the bench beneath Ain's, solid and warm and patient. That same support holds you now, wherever you are resting. Feel the breeze moving across the terrace, touching with gentleness. That same air surrounds you, cool and kind against your skin. The scent of lavender and jasmine drifts through the darkness, and perhaps you can almost smell it, that fragrance of peace and safety and home. The stars above Nazarick shine down on the sleeping world, and those same stars shine wherever you are, their ancient light a blessing given freely to all who rest beneath them. The moon rises, patient in its arc, lighting the path between waking and sleeping with silver gentleness. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to figure out or solve or worry about. The night has come, and with it, permission to rest. Feel your own body now, held by whatever surface supports you. Feel how it carries your weight without complaint, how it asks nothing in return for this service. Your mattress, your pillow, your blankets. They are like the bench in the stone wall, like the warm bathwater, like the oak tree's roots. They hold you with simple, steady care. Your breathing slows naturally, without effort. In and out, like the gentle breeze moving through the terrace herbs. In and out, like the water flowing in the underground lake. Each breath carries away a bit of the day's tension. Each exhale releases what you no longer need to carry. Your chest rises and falls in its ancient rhythm, and that rhythm connects you to everything living. The plants growing in their pots, the fish swimming in deep water, the trees standing patient in night forests. Your muscles are releasing now, one by one, starting with your feet. Feel how heavy they've become, how they sink into the bed beneath you. That heaviness is good. It means you're safe enough to stop holding yourself alert, safe enough to let gravity do its work. Your legs grow heavy too, solid and still, no need to move them, no need to be anywhere except right here. The heaviness moves upward through your body like water rising, like the bath's warm embrace. Your hips settle deeper. Your stomach softens. Your chest becomes still and quiet. Your arms lie heavy at your sides, hands open and relaxed, no need to grip or hold or carry anything. Even your shoulders drop, releasing their constant work of holding you upright and ready. They can rest now. Everything can rest. Your neck relaxes, allowing your head to rest fully against your pillow. Feel how the pillow shapes itself to hold you, how it asks nothing except that you accept its support. Your jaw loosens. Your tongue rests gently in your mouth. Your eyes are so heavy now, so very heavy, and closing feels like the most natural thing in the world. Let them close. Let the darkness behind your eyelids become a restful space, a place where you don't need to see or watch or pay attention. The sounds around you, whatever they might be, become part of the night's lullaby. The hum of appliances, the whisper of air moving, distant traffic or close silence, all of it weaves together into a blanket of sound that reminds you the world continues its patient work while you rest. You don't need to listen to any of it. You can let it all fade into gentle background noise, like the crickets singing in the oak tree garden, like the water dripping in the underground lake. Your thoughts are slowing now, becoming softer, less urgent. They drift like the fireflies in the garden, touching briefly on one thing then another, but nothing demands your attention. Nothing requires your action or decision or concern. You can let your thoughts drift and dissolve, let them become less defined, more like dreams than thinking. Each thought that arrives is allowed to leave, floating away into the darkness like those cherry blossoms, beautiful and temporary and requiring nothing from you. The peace that Ains found in his wandering is available to you now, in this moment. The peace of the autumn garden with its eternal gentle light. The peace of the underground lake holding its stillness. The peace of the oak tree standing patient through centuries. The peace of the warm bath water cradling without demand. The peace of the starlit terrace where earth and sky meet in perfect balance. All of that peace gathers around you now, settling over you like the softest blanket, like moonlight, like the night's own embrace. You are safe here. The darkness that surrounds you is friendly darkness, restful darkness, the kind that holds and protects rather than threatens. The night watches over you the way Nazareth watches over its sleeping guardians, the way the oak tree shelters the garden beneath its branches, the way the stars keep their patient vigil over everything. You are held by this darkness, carried by it, invited deeper into its gentle depths. There is nothing you need to do except this. Rest. Let your body become heavier still, sinking deeper into your bed, becoming part of the surface that holds you. Let your breathing slow even more, each breath longer and deeper and easier than the last. Let your mind drift further into softness, into the space between thoughts, into the quiet that has no edges or demands. The story is ended now, but its peace continues, spreading outward in ripples like those circles on the underground lake, touching you, surrounding you, inviting you to join it in stillness. The tale of the wandering overlord finding home in quiet places has become your own tale. You too are wandering toward rest. You too are finding home in this moment of peace. You too are discovering that safety lives in simple things. Darkness, silence, stillness, breath. Very safe. Very quiet. Very still. Nothing moving now except your breath, and even that is slowing, becoming smaller, quieter, barely noticeable. Your body has become so heavy it feels like part of the bed, like stone settled into earth, like tree roots grown deep over years. You couldn't move even if you wanted to, and you don't want to. Movement belongs to the day. Night is for stillness. The last of your thoughts are dissolving now, becoming less like thinking and more like the distant memory of thinking, like fog burning off in morning sun, like the space where dreams begin. You're drifting between waking and sleeping, held in that gentle transition, and you can let yourself drift further. You can let go of the last thread connecting you to wakefulness. You can release it gently and slip into deeper rest.